Welcome back to the Inspired by Show. We are now at the end of season 2. Can you believe it? What a season we have had. Now, if you've been tuning in every single week and you've been absorbing our interviews with our authors and learning about their amazing stories and their journeys of writing their best-selling books, learning about how they publish their books and telling their stories and overcoming the wobbles that many of us authors have, then I hope you've been enjoying it. Now, as I'm going off for maternity leave and we're finishing up our season 2, we thought what a best way to end our season before you jump into the Christmas period and I jump off to have a baby, why not look at some of the best bits of this season? So if you have already been tuning into the season, it'd be interesting to see if these stuck in your mind as some of the best bits as well. Or if you haven't and you're just tuning in here, then guess what? You have come to the right place because you're going to get to have a summary of some of the best bits that we've experienced over this season. Now, over this season, not only have we had world record holders, we've had Sunday Times bestselling authors, we've had international speakers, we've had people travel over from Australia, from America, all over to come and speak to us on the Inspired by Show. Over the season, we have had 25 bestselling books talked about on this series. So it has been an amazing season 2, and I'm really excited to share with you some of our best bits. So now with that in mind, I'm going to stop talking. You can start listening. Let's tune into our first best bit, our first author of season 2. What was it like getting your publishing deal, working on Mission Possible and everything that came after that?
Yeah, it was good. It was interesting because I think when it came to the book, I didn't really appreciate it that much back then, whereas now it's flipped. I know the power of a really good book, whereas back then it was almost like I wanted to publish it because we've got all of these stories and we've got sort of life lessons learned from the extremes that can be placed in sort of everyday life, so it's a really good sort of lessons to the book that I felt that if people read, they'll take something from it. So it's not just about, me and my adventures, it's what they can take from it and utilize certain aspects of that to help themselves in career or life or whatnot. So I was excited for that point, but I almost felt like I rushed it because I had a big UK theatre tour coming up. And so we condensed it, and I think we tried to get it out within, write it and print it. I've got a feeling it was 5 months. Which that's fast, right?
Very fast.
That's too fast. But we did that just so that we could sell extra copies on the UK theatre tour. So I want to do another book for sure because there isn't one on the Yangtze, there isn't one on the Great Wall of China, and now it will come from a point of sort of spending over a year and like making sure it's not that Mission Possible is a bad book. It's a good book. Lots of reviews, lots of people enjoyed it, but it could have been so much better. And like my girlfriend, when she was reading it, she said she's a huge bookworm. She loves book reads like all the time. She said it's great, but you kind of breeze through the Gobi Desert. You don't say how you almost died and what that felt like, and you don't explain the temperature. And now that it was like pulling a concrete block through hell. You don't explain how it was sinking in and what your organs were doing, how you felt them drying up, and that you went over a week without seeing a single human. And I'm like, yeah, looking back now, because to me it was a case of I did it, it was hard, I got it done. But people want to know that process, And so I need to republish that one, really. Republish it or do a new one, and I'll be able to focus in. But it did help, I think. It just provides more kudos as well, doesn't it? Having a published book out there, and it's something you can promote and be proud of and sell during talks, or if people want to know more about sort of your background and how you did whatever you're doing, they can just read the book, and that might help them on their way. So it was great to get it out there.
I know you wrote your first book in 2021 and obviously read a lot of books. What advice would you give to anyone who's maybe writing a book with what you've learned about reading books and think, do you know what, that makes a good book?
Oh gosh, it's impossible. Like what you just said, there's a million books. The thing that I like is the author, and some books really resonate with me and some books don't. I mean, I remember reading Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules of Life, and I had to stop halfway through. I thought it was an absolute pile of rubbish. I hated it. I hated that book. I thought it was like really pushy religion. And then he goes into a part in the story where he talks about how that he thinks that women that go into their counsellor and say they've been sexually assaulted have potentially made that up. Yeah, it's really, really fucked up. Like, I threw it away.
Oh
I
my gosh,
like,
I don't blame you. That's
yeah,
horrific.
I was like, I can't, this isn't self-helping me. This isn't rule for life. Like, I can't get on board with this narrative. So literally, I was like, I threw the book away. I couldn't do it. And so, yeah, it's be as authentic as you can, because I didn't like that book. I do like Jordan Peterson, though. When he talks, he makes a lot of sense. So it was a complete disconnect. But millions of people also like his book. So, just write it from your heart and try not to overthink it, because if you believe it and it helps you, it will help someone else. It just, that we're humans, of course.
As a parent, how did you feel when you started seeing the autism signs?
I feel like at the beginning I was kind of clinging on to no, he was fine, he was fine, and then to the point it was actually became sort of depressing. So it was really quite depressing, and really like if at one point you kind of feel hopeless, but you can't lose hope because it's your child. Without, yeah. So I think when anyone's a parent, you have so many dreams for your child, and then to have to put limitations on them, it's just you can't do it easily. You can't accept that easily. So I tired. Let's just maybe cut this out.
Don't worry, take your time, lovely. It's
But,
a great answer.
Okay. But I think it's really, really hard to accept that your child's going to have a difficult life. And you're right, being a driven person, as a parent, you have so many dreams for your child. I'd rather not live my whole life seeing my son struggle. So I thought, okay, there's a window of time to do something about this now. So then I just made the most of it.
Wow. So how did you then go from doing it for your own son to then thinking, actually, this is something I want to learn more about, write a book about, build a business about?
Okay. So I started off being like the community expert in autism. So a lot of people had seen the transformation my son had made. And it's a little bit impressive that your son has autism, and now he's not anxious everywhere. He's thriving, he's talking, he's making fast progress. So I sort of became like the go-to expert in my friendship circles around autism. And a lot of people would send me videos of their child doing this, ask me for advice. And then I realized that a lot of people don't seem to have this knowledge, and that there was a real demand for it. And I just find, because I learned so much so quickly, I was surprised when people had older autistic children and they didn't know certain things, which I felt was so obvious. So then I thought there's a big demand here, and then I thought I should do something formal about it. And that's why I decided to write a book called Unlock Autism, and that describes my 7-step autism action plan. And that's been received really, really nicely actually by so many people. And now the information is out there, because a lot of people don't even know what causes autism. We're told that it's genetic, but really it's actually epigenetic. Which I can explain, which is that just because you have the genes for something doesn't mean you're necessarily going to express it. So genes can be switched on and off depending on your environment. For example, you might have a gene for obesity, but if you're always eating healthy food, if you're in a food poverty environment, your gene for obesity will never be expressed. So it's literally like genes load the gun, but your actions and your environment pulls the trigger. So autism is like that. It's epigenetic. And I feel like with a lot of parents who I've spoken to, especially the ones who had the rapid loss in skills and had that skills regression, they find it very hard to accept that it's genetic, because they say, my child wasn't born like this. So he wasn't like this. I've got videos of him like this. And they're really desperate to show people the videos that he or she was born normally and had eye contact and was saying words. But there really isn't much help out there, which is why I started this business to formally help parents now.
Did you always know what the book was going to be? Or was there ever a point where you're like, well, I've got this book deal. What book am I going to write?
I knew that it was going to be about my journey and it was going to be part memoir because I had gone through so much in the lead up to launching Smart Girl Tribe and then the journey in between starting it and securing the book deal. So I knew it would follow my journey and I knew that it was going to be advice. One thing that I was doing was I was a speaker, so I was speaking in a lot of schools at the time and at universities and in different businesses. And I started noticing that at every event that I was invited to, there would be queues of women for hours just waiting afterwards to ask me one question. So I thought, okay, they need something tangible to walk away with because I'm giving them an answer to this question, but I'm not going to be there tomorrow. I'm not going to be there next week. I'm not going to be there next year. They need something tangible that they can pick up and turn to. And that's when I then secured the book deal. That's what I remembered. So I went home and I wrote a list of the most common themes and topics I was asked about. And then also the most personal, vulnerable stories of mine that I never wanted to share with anyone. And I put it all in the book.
Oh, I love it. It's the perfect balance, though. It's what I say. Obviously, as a publisher, I always say to people, you don't want to only have a memoir. You don't want to only have like a self-help or how-to book advice. You want to blend the two because that's what helps people learn and also relate to you as well.
Having this meeting with this book agent here in London, it just happened, of course, that I would be in Spain in June, and this is last year. And I said to the book agent, well, how about I come and meet you in London on my way back to Australia because it's just as easy to pop over here. So I met with her, I met with a few publishers, and in a matter of days signed a publishing deal, which was incredible. Then within 2 weeks of that, I'd had someone help me because I was walking the Camino, which is an 800-kilometre pilgrimage, and had no time to actually sit down and create this, the chapter that we needed to send out. So this incredible human, Chelsea, had been asked if she could just collate all my information because I've got so much content on my program, my HDX program. And she was asked just to put something together, send it to me. Then I went through and edited it. Great. Went off. Obviously, the publishers loved it. And from that point, once I signed the publishing deal, I actually said, is there any chance that Chelsea could help me out? If I give you the plan of what I want this book to look like, is it possible for her to go through all my content and kind of pop it into the book? Sure enough, yep, that's fine. So Chelsea did just that. So I actually ended up getting almost like a manuscript of my book. And then I went through and edited that. We went through the process. Anyway, by the end of February this year, that manuscript went in. And because I'm a book virgin, I was kind of like, well, I don't know what everyone's complaining about. And my entire team were all like, this is the easiest book we've ever worked on. Why has it been so easy? And I kept saying, because I've just followed my strategy and authority, all of these things that I thought were impossible. I mean, I'm dyslexic for a start. So the whole idea of writing a book from scratch was a little bit scary. Even though I've done a contributing chapter to a book before, but the whole book felt really overwhelming. But I just kept following my human design. I just kept following this process. And in the end, everyone has said to us, it's been so easy, it's been really simple, it's just flowed from one thing to the next thing, it feels so serendipitous. And I think it's because ultimately I wasn't overly attached to the way it had to be or what it needed to look like, because I've become so used to just following my strategy and authority, just trusting the process, knowing that this book baby of mine is so much bigger than me and my ego, it's more important that it gets out to as many people, given that one of our missions is to take human design mainstream and make it super simple so that people can integrate it in a way that is going to be really profound for them. So, yeah, the whole journey just felt really effortless.
What was it like for you actually writing a book? What did you find surprising? Was there anything that you struggled with in particular?
When when I was doing it, it was important for me to be authentic. And I kind of put a bit at the end. I had to revisit some really dark places. And for me to put that across, I had to let myself get back into that state of mind. And it was difficult, because it was like, well, what do I include? What do I pull back? Do they need to know that? So, like, as I say, there's a disclaimer at the beginning about things like sexual abuse and suicide and bullying and things like that. But I thought, well, they don't need the details. All they need to know is that aspect of it. So it was, obviously, I've got the details, which isn't fine, but the reader doesn't need to know that, because they'll be able to relate to it in their way. And again, some of the comments and the messages that I've had reflect that. It's like, well, I don't know what you've been through, but this is what that meant to me. And people have really opened up, and it's brilliant, because it's like, I don't want to sound ego, but the kind of general message I'm getting from them is that it's the first time somebody is really giving them a voice to be able to say, this has happened to somebody else. It's not just me. I can deal with it and I can talk about it. And honestly, I keep using the word privilege, because it's for somebody that I don't even know to reach out and tell me that. It's just magic. It must have taken them a lot. So I do try and be as respectful as I can with people. So that was the hardest thing probably writing it, was how do I put it out there but remain respectful. So that was quite difficult. So there was quite a lot of revision changes before even coming to you and your team.
The interesting thing is, a lot of people feel like you have to be traditional published to be a Sunday Times bestseller or any bestseller. Actually, it's not that gets you, it's the marketing.
It's the marketing. You don't have to be traditionally published. I've had clients in Authors & Co., which is our publishing company, that have self-published and become Sunday Times bestseller. But I think there's a kudos, isn't there, to someone offering you a book deal. Like, we don't want there to be, but there is.
Yeah.
And so, because it's hard to get a publishing deal. And so that sways people a lot of the time. And I can totally understand why. But they offered me a second book deal and I've turned it down, because I'm going to self-publish, because I will make more money self-publishing, and I will be able to have people know about my courses, and I'll be able to use it as a funnel and all the other things. And so, I've got the Sunday Times bestseller now. I don't need a second one. So yeah, that's kind of how it went.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're being so honest, Lisa, because it's music to my ears, because I feel like I'm forever saying this to people, that people want the traditional publishing. And also, I mean, we're very fortunate. We've got a fantastic marketing strategy, and we've published, at the moment of recording this, 52 best-selling books.
Amazing.
And it's been amazing. And a lot of people come to us and go, can I become a bestseller? For me, it's like, yes, and what? What are you using your book for?
Yeah.
Because I've seen so many bestsellers that can't afford to pay their bills, that are living their life, this champagne lifestyle on lemonade budget. And I really struggle with it. I think you need to make sure you've got a business behind the book, right? Which is now where you're going to.
Yes, and that's the thing. I think that's what's really important. Like, people don't know why they want a book. One of the first things we do in our company, if somebody comes to us and says, I want to write a book, we say, why? Because why do you want the book? Like, is it a vanity project? Because if you do, that's a different thing than, and mine was, if we're honest about it. It's a different thing to, I want the book to help my business, which is what I would now do it for.
Yeah, definitely. So what would you say, or what advice would you give to, say, an entrepreneur or a speaker or a podcaster that was thinking of writing a book?
I think it needs to happen. Like, there are so many people don't realize the stories they have. They don't realize how inspiring they are, and they don't realize that they all have more knowledge than someone else. I have this phrase, your knowledge is not common knowledge. And I really believe that. And I think everyone who wants to be positioned as a leader in their field, they need to write a book.
Yeah, definitely. Because again, it's getting to the point where everyone is publishing books. I mean, we were doing some research recently for a talk I gave where it's 10% of experts actually only publish books.
Wow.
So there are 90% of people that are experts, coaches, speakers, podcasters that don't. So if you're in that 90%, you're going to sink. There's one big thing I need to share with you that I find most entrepreneurs make this mistake. And it's worrying about putting too much in the book. They worry about giving away too much in the book, which will ultimately stop them making money. So let's say you're writing a book about your particular area of expertise. A lot of people worry that if I put loads in this book, Chloe, it's going to stop me actually getting more money. It's going to stop me making my 100K, 300K, or even more. And actually, it's not true. what often happens is people will read books over and over and over and over, and every time they read them, they get different bits of information. Nobody has the brain power to can remember everything in your book. And even if you have a book where the course is exactly the same afterwards, they're learning in different ways. How someone reads a book and the information they take from it versus how someone watches a video or how someone does a course or how someone works with you one-to-one, they are going to take so much different information. And not to mention, working with you one-to-one, very different to reading a book. And so please never worry about putting too much in your book. In fact, I would argue that if you don't put more in your book, you're actually reducing your chances of getting great results for your reader and reducing your chances of growing your business with your book. Because this is what happens. A lot of entrepreneurs will hold back in their book. And so the reader feels it. They're like, oh, I've bought this book and it's rubbish. It's like just waffly, or it only has a few key things in it. It doesn't actually share with me what I need to know. It keeps telling me it's going to tell me what I need to know, but actually I've learned nothing new. Now, if someone feels like that after buying your book, there is no way they're going to invest more money in you. However, if you write a book that genuinely helps people, that genuinely gives them exactly what they need, and you do it without worrying and being a place of lack and worrying that they're not going to buy from you, and you just focus on, I'm going to write the best book I can of the highest quality to really get them results, then they're going to feel that. And they're going to think, oh my gosh, if I got all of that for £10 or £15 or whatever they bought, they're way more likely to work with you, because guess what? They'll be thinking, well, if I paid that for £10, what am I going to get if I pay £1,000? What am I going to get if I spend £10,000 with this person? They trust you because they can feel that you've genuinely delivered. And so please don't worry about giving too much in your book, because ultimately, the more you give, the more value they get, the more of the expert they think you are, and the more authority you gain, and therefore, the more money you make. From your perspective, obviously, you've published 14 books. That first one was 20 years ago, which is incredible. What publishing routes have you tried? Have you self-published? Have you worked with traditional publishers? Have you worked with a publisher like us, like a hybrid that helps? What sort of things have you done in the past?
Yeah, so the first book was self-published, clearly by the amount of spelling mistakes in it. And then a more mainstream publisher, a small publishing house called Crown House, came across it, and they approached me to do a version for the shops, to go into the shops. And they professionalized it. I think I added some chapters at the end, and they edited it and improved it considerably. New photography for the cover, same concept. I don't know whether you can see this here. I'm holding the little boss man between my fingers, and on this one, I'm stamping the little boss man under my foot. So they professionalized the entire process, and I would get a royalty for every book sold. Again, I can't recall, because I think this is like 2005. I can't recall exactly how much that was. 2005. But it was very little. It wasn't very much. But I wasn't doing it for the royalties. I was doing it for the exposure. Now, as it happens, I didn't get a lot of exposure from this mainstream published book, but I did get a lot from the self-published version. Because the self-published version, I could promote to groups that I was speaking to. My company ran conferences, and we would have a stand outside with the books. And I couldn't do that with these. I suppose I could have bought them from the publisher, but it didn't really make financial sense. So that was actually my only brush with a mainstream publisher, because after that I thought, you know what, I can do this myself, and I can do it faster, because their process just took forever. I can do it faster, and I can do it easier. I've got control over it. And the main reason for publishing a book after that first one was as a lead generator, was to find people who are interested in what I did. So then I started putting together books around the business that I owned at that time. And I would actually give the books away free of charge, because I was more interested in that person's name, address, and contact details, and the fact that they were identifying themselves as interested, than I was in £10. Yeah, I quite gladly pay them £10 for their contact details. So, just picking from the pile in front of me here, I had a business that did web design, and we did this book, Turn Your Website into a Sales Machine in Just 30 Days. Lovely cover on that one, actually. It's not a huge book. It's less than 100 pages, and that was a great way. We gave that away on Facebook, and we got thousands of leads from that. I started a business, a sort of consultancy business. I self-published this little book. This was even less pages, actually. This was like 68 pages. And this again produced, well, probably tens of thousands of leads. I tell you how I produced this one. I previously recorded 4 or 5 CDs on different aspects of sales and marketing. So maybe there was a CD on referrals, one on joint ventures, and I got the CDs transcribed, and this is effectively the transcript of the CDs.
Fantastic.
So again, very, very fast production. And I can't remember the unit cost of these, but it's just a few pence. And it was a wonderful way of building a mailing list of people interested in my consultancy services.
Yeah, brilliant. It's music to my ears, Jonathan, because I would say that's one of the number one things I say to so many authors that come to us is, yes, they might have a passion to write a book, and yes, they want the exposure, but I always call it what's the business behind the book? What are you going to do to generate money for the book? Because you and I both know, and we're very transparent here, books alone do not make a huge amount of money. And a lot of authors think they will. They'll think they'll get an advance. They think they're going to make all this money and they're going to be on TV. And that doesn't pay them well. Like you've described, as soon as you then connect it to your consulting business or any business, and you've just proved, whether it's a web development business, whether it's deal makers, whether it's another business, it doesn't matter what the topic is, the books can funnel you clients into your business. All of our authors we publish, the person you are when you start writing a book, you are such a different person by the end. So different. And so we would say, don't have to feel like you're editing it as you go. Yeah. Actually, just write, get it out. That's the hardest bit. And then go back through, because then you're your own mentor. You look back and you go, Chloe, how did you ever say this was good? And I'm like, yeah, but it was good. The version you were then.
Yeah, spot on.
Now you've learned
you were
so
like
much.
So supportive. Like, yeah, it looks really great. Like this. And I'm looking back going, God, no. Like, and my husband, it's so funny. He's like, you drive me nuts, because I just chuck everything out there, right? With no structure. There's no structure. There's no this. And I was like, do I even put it into chapters, right? And then they had like real issues with a bonus chapter, right? They had massive issues because it was like, it's not part of the step. And I went, no. But I talked about AI so much that you just went, you need to write a chapter on it. And I went, oh, yes. I was like, literally like, oh, I'm so excited. And it's just like, okay, crikey, that's nearly a book. Like when I first wrote about it, that was almost a book. And I was like, okay, no, I need to refine that, because again, it's like, it needs to be relatable. It needs to be, if you've never done it before, or you've got a little bit. And I think the other thing was really good is you said every chapter has to work on its own. So that really helped, because it was like, otherwise it would just be like, that needs to flow into that, and then that needs to flow into that. Actually, it didn't have to. So it's almost like, like mini ebooks. Exactly, someone said to me, like, you've written like 8 mini ebooks. I said, oh, have I? Yeah. Okay. But yeah, that kind of helped, that it had to work on its own.
And the reason why is because most people don't read a book cover to cover in one session. And so if we get to chapter 4, and they might have read chapter 3 6 months ago. Yeah. And if they open it and they feel like they've missed a step, they're going to feel like, oh, I'll have to read it another time. Yeah. And it's a bit like, speaking, podcasting, they all have to work individually, because you could now pick up your book and go and do a talk on any one of those steps like that. Yeah. Because they work on their own. A lot of our viewers and our listeners are wanting to be authors themselves, whether it's business books or children's books or anything like that. So what advice would you give to someone with your entrepreneurial hat on as well, because obviously you have your business as well, when it comes to sort of getting out their way and writing a book?
Don't think too much about it. Just find that passion, you'll find that flair. And if you've wanted to do it, just start start a Word document, start pen and paper, whichever is your thing. Some people use an iPad and one of these fancy pens, and just go for it. Just get some notes down if you think that you can't write a book. I was talking to somebody only the other day who said, "Oh, I'll never be able to write a book," and I said, "But you can." And just start with a few bullet points, start with a few notes. You'll be surprised at then how those notes will become sentences that will become paragraphs, and then you'll really be off on a tangent and it will start flowing, and it doesn't matter what order it goes in. And then if they come and speak to people like yourself, you guys, you run a great agency, you're really open, do that, because you will then have the team to help put those words in order if you're worried about it.
How did you decide how vulnerable to be in your book and what to include rather than what not?
Well, I think when I first started writing, it wasn't about writing for a book. So I could be vulnerable. Everything just went down there. All my, how I was feeling. So it was all captured. And then when the decision came, about the book and the podcast, I thought, how much of that do I really want to share? And don't get me wrong, there are things that I don't share and I will not share, but I just thought it can help people, because I want people to know that whatever bad place they're in, I've been to a really bad place too, and that you can recover from that. So for me, it was essential to keep that stuff in. And now when I read the book, I become quite emotional myself, because obviously it's my story. And even today, I was reading parts of it coming down on the train and filling up on the train, and it takes me to some dark places. Also, it makes me feel so proud of who I am now and what I've now. And I found my purpose through it, and through the podcast and writing the book. It's just been such a fantastic experience to help people. And if I only help one person, then it's all worth it.
And there it is. There are our best bits. So I hope you have enjoyed having a little recap of the year that we've had at the Inspired by Show, and the most important parts, some of the most powerful parts of season 2. Now, season 2 has been all about writing your best-selling book, becoming an author, building your brand, learning how to tell your story. So I really hope you have enjoyed it as much as I have. And that's all that we have time for our final episode of the season. So I'm going to go off now and have a baby. And I'm looking forward to seeing you back here for season 3, where we're going to take our authors to the next level. Just you wait until you see some of the authors that we have got lined up to be interviewed on this show. We have best-selling authors, we have TEDx speakers, we have people who have literally written a book, published a book within months, and been able to completely skyrocket their brand. So I'm so excited for you to learn from these authors. But for now, that's everything we've got time for. I hope you have an amazing Christmas and festive period. Enjoy the New Year celebrations, and I'll see you in 2025.